there are a few legendary centers of culture in the world. This is one of them. The Mariinsky, also known as the Kirov. For over 200 years, this golden jewel box of a theater has been at the vortex of a world of musical creativity. Tchaikovsky, Shostakovich, Balanchine, Rimsky-Korsakov, Diaghilev, and Mikhail Baryshnikov have all come from this opulent theater built for the Tsarist court. No other place combines ballet, symphonic music, and opera, as well as schools for the performing arts at this elite level. For over a century, its dancers have been among the best in the world.
If, God forbid, the Mariinsky-Kirov should disappear, ballet would lack a compass. There wouldn't be a true north.
Along with the ballet, the Kirov opera has a long and vibrant tradition.
We see so many young coming artists. If something will happen to the company of the Kirov or Mariinsky, it will be a disaster.
This is a place that should have died twice. The first time the Mariinsky should have died was after the Russian Revolution of 1918, with the fall of the Imperial court. After the collapse of communism in the 1990s, the theater should have died a second time. Many cultural institutions dissolved in the economic chaos of post-Soviet Russia. But again, the Mariinsky endured and grew in stature, due largely to this one man, its artistic director, Valery Abysalovich Gergiev, a unique combination of magnetism, political smarts, and musical genius.
We shouldn't try to mimic, repeat, copy what even great opera houses do. We should find what was good about our past. Why Tchaikovsky or Mussorgsky or even Wagner, Verdi were attracted to work here. Why? So there was something. Made it great, made it grand. We are more than halfway to restore it, but we shouldn't only try to restore. We play with the new.
There is an enormous pool of talent in St. Petersburg. Unbelievable sculptors, unbelievable painters, people who would, be doing something else if it wasn't a moment in the Russian history as right now when things are really in flux, things are changing.
The legend of the Mariinsky Theater has been forged by 2 revolutions and 2 world wars, the most turbulent, tragic periods in modern Russian history. Centuries of tradition could easily have been lost in a single generation. Instead, this is the story of artistic and creative survival, and of a very special place on this planet. It has been called the sacred stage. The city of St. Petersburg, a creation of Tsar Peter the Great. He made this northern port city the seat of his government, the symbol and the reality of his country's awakening from its dark past and a new openness to the West. In the 19th century, it blossomed to become a center of the country's literature, science, architecture, opera, and ballet. In 1860, Tsar Alexander II built the Mariinsky Theater as a gift to his Empress Maria. It is here that ballet, a court dance imported from France, was reborn into its stunning classical perfection.
Of course, I'd like to try working in Grand Opera, La Scala, or Covent Garden, but the Mariinsky Theater is the real dream. You agree, Tanya?
I do, because there's some mysterious force that holds people here. I mean, every time you come to rehearsal, tired, feeling like you can't go on, then you think, look at all these amazing people, how they work. And of course, some troupes don't have a strong corps de ballet as we do.
And the aura.
Yes, and the aura. Our theater has something special, something you won't find anywhere else, though we've never tried working anywhere else.
The aura of the Kirov Ballet comes from the fact that it's the former Imperial Ballet from the Russian Imperial capital. And yet it also belonged to this country that was in cultural upheaval all of its life practically. And at the end of the 19th century, when it was flowering with that last kind of gorgeous, transparent, heartbreaking, horrible flower of imperial culture before it went under, the ballet was a big symbol of everything that was precious and somehow that they knew was about to disappear.
The ballet most connected with the imperial capital is an ancient fable of birth, death, and rebirth, Tchaikovsky's The Sleeping Beauty. Once upon a time, there was born in a faraway kingdom a princess named Aurora, Dawn, the heir to the throne. A chorus of fairies come to celebrate the christening of the baby princess. Into this joyous scene, danger and intrigue.
The court forgets to invite one fairy who's been bitter for many years and who has hidden herself in some tower somewhere. That is Karabas. Karabas learns of the party and arrives with her carriage and her retinue of mice and cats and perverse people. She's like the Miss Havisham of the ballet. And she tries to ruin the party.
Karabas, wretched and jealous, puts a terrible curse on the child. She proclaims that each year the princess will grow in health, accomplishment, and beauty. But on her 16th birthday, she will prick her finger with a poison spindle, and then she will die.
But the Lilac Fairy, the chief of the fairies, hasn't yet given her gift.
The Lilac Fairy has great power. She is the force of beauty, which can overcome even the force of evil. She cannot break the curse, but she can soften it. The beloved princess will not die. She will just sleep. Aurora, the only child of the king and queen, is their hope for the future. The monarchy will survive.
The Sleeping Beauty was made for a court, and it's about a court. It's one of these great texts that sums up a culture. For instance, Aurora's entrance. In the prologue, we've seen her be christened, but we haven't seen her because it's a doll on stage. But at the start of Act 1, she comes out for her garden party, for her birthday. And it's also her debut in that old high-class sense of the word. She's being presented to her court. And Tchaikovsky has given her one of the great stage entrances of all times for the leading lady. She's like, she can't contain herself with excitement. She's arrived, she's grown up, this is her court, she's beautiful. The Sleeping Beauty has in it so much knowledge that is deeper than words about the impossibility of this court culture, the beauty, the grandeur, the exquisiteness, and the impossibility.
In this moment of joy, everyone has forgotten the terrible curse. Everyone except the audience. The evil fairy Karabas has come to the party in disguise and presents the princess with a spindle. To prevent disaster, the king had long ago issued a decree banning all needles and spindles from the kingdom. Unaware of the danger, the innocent princess is fascinated by this strange object. Curse of Karabas. She pricks her finger. The spell takes hold. The king is convinced his only child will die. Enter the lilac fairy. She reminds the court that she has vowed to soften the curse. Aurora will live. She instructs the courtiers to carry the princess into the palace. Then, with a wave of her wand, the lilac fairy casts her spell. She puts the entire kingdom into a deep 100-year sleep.
The analogies are inescapable between Sleeping Beauty and Russian history. You almost think that Tchaikovsky, who is a great sorcerer of an artist, almost knew.
A thicket of brambles grows up around the sleeping court. And in the middle of this dense forest, the enchanted palace is cut off from the world.
This is what Petersburgers love to think, that the melancholy was built into the city, into its art, and they thought there was a time up ahead when it was going to go under. And from the point of view of the West, it did go under, and it was shut off to us as if by a curtain of brambles for 100 years. Well, for a lot of years.
This is Catherine the Great's summer palace. Just one of the imperial family's many homes. The Romanoffs lived in a fairy tale world of banquets and jewels and servants. Their highly ornate palaces were huge and extravagant. Every possible surface was gilded. The Mariinsky Theater was an extension of this world. Everyone who worked there was an employee of the Tsar. The sovereign and his retinue had their own private entrance to the theater, and within the theater, a series of anterooms. In these rooms, the nobility, with their furs and diamonds, would assemble before the performance. And finally, at the end of these elegant rooms was the Tsar's private box, looking out over the gold and satin of his magnificent theater. This was a world of endless excess, but it was surrounded by a world of endless poverty. The Romanovs were the last absolute rulers of Europe. They lived a lavish lifestyle, supported by a starving and brutalized underclass of millions. All this in the 20th century. It was doomed to end, and it did, suddenly and with great brutality. In 1918, Russian revolutionaries killed the Tsar and his entire family and attempted to destroy every vestige of Imperial Russia. It seemed inevitable that the Mariinsky Theater, this plaything of absolute monarchs, would disappear forever into history. But somehow, miraculously, it was not only saved, it flourished.
How did it survive? How did ballet survive? It was the roll of the dice. It turned out that Lenin had a cultural commissar named Anatoly Lunacharsky, who was a balletomane. He loved the ballet. And he persuaded Lenin that this was part of the culture that now belonged to the people. It had belonged to the court, now it belonged to the people. So did all the palaces. They were meticulously preserved. And this art made it into the Soviet canon. It wasn't such a small city, St. Petersburg, which had become Petrograd and then Leningrad, and now is again St. Petersburg. It was a proud city. It had a culture of its own, and it embraced the ballet and protected it. It protected the ballet in a sense as a symbol of its essence, that it couldn't let die or it itself might die. And everybody who knows a little about Russian history knows that the agony, the passion of this city happened in World War II when the Germans surrounded it for 900 days and almost starved it to death, and the city lost 1/3 of its population. And then after World War II, they put together the whole thing exactly as it was and inducted the generation into this sense that this is how life really is. Outside, there's another politics, but in here is what's precious.
If Sleeping Beauty is the signature Russian ballet, the quintessential Russian opera is Boris Godunov. This opera realistically portrays a crowd of peasants whipped and beaten like a tide of puppets. During the Soviet era, Russians watching this opera could not help but see resonances with their own daily lives. The theater for them was both a means of escape and one of the few places they could find expression for pent-up longings.
I made my debut in Russia 30 years ago. It was a totally different place. It was, of course, the Soviet Union in those days. And you will see people in the street, walking in the street, and they won't look at you in the eyes. You know, the situation was in those days, you know, people, they were really under a different regime, and they really hardly look at you in the eyes. But something very interesting, wonderful. People at the theater, they open. At the theater, all the feelings. At the theater, all their emotions, they explode.
In Soviet times, as under the Tsars, anyone who dared reveal the truth, the realities of political oppression and economic privation, risked imprisonment as a lunatic. One of the memorable characters in Boris Godunov is a traditional figure from Russian folklore, the holy fool, the ragged simpleton who also tells the truth. This famous role was sung by a 20-year-old Plácido Domingo at the beginning of his career in Mexico City.
We did it in Italian. Dolce notte sospira l'innocente immerso nella sua preghiera. And I think at the end he was just lamenting about Russia, you know, so this sad thing. Oh, triste.
At the end of the scene, we see Tsar Boris staggering past the simpleton in a daze. He senses that his power is coming to an end, and he is overcome with terror. In the early 1990s, communism in the Soviet Union collapsed. Russians faced years of chaos and uncertainty. And for the second time in its history, the Mariinsky-Kirov seemed doomed. How would the theater, with its elaborate productions and huge staff, survive the unforgiving winds of capitalism? This was the situation which Valery Gergiev faced as he assumed control of the company. In order to ensure the Mariinsky's survival, he knew he had to make it, once again, a world center of musical excellence. His first challenge was to raise the level of the orchestra and the opera to that of the theater's already superb ballet. For this once provincial company, he was like a force of nature.
When Gergiev came to the Mariinsky Theater, there was constant pressure. There were sudden changes in mood, sudden changes in repertoire. The tempo was practically impossible, but we all got used to it. And I think Gergiev himself has changed. At the beginning, his approach was all Sturm und Drang. But now this explosive quality is shaded with the impressionistic nuances of quiet passages, of coloristic passages. In my view, now he is a different Gergiev. All of us in the orchestra get into it, submit to it. We are captivated and charmed by this idea, and so we become one united organism.
Historically, the Kirov, of course, in the ballet side, has been very strong. Stronger, in a way, than the opera. Now the level is very much even. It's really like a total renaissance for the music, for the opera.
Gergiev has been steering the theater into new and experimental directions. Even with Boris Godunov, the most venerated classic of the repertoire, he is looking to create something new and fresh.
When Valery asked me to do Boris, you know, I've read the story of Boris when I was a child. And all of a sudden I came back to this historical period and then the opera itself, and I was shocked. I was shocked by the horror, I was shocked by the cruelty and sheer primitive power of this situation, and the way, you know, people came to power, the way people remained in power, killed each other, poisoned each other. It's just I couldn't believe that was the real history, and then I read a little bit about it, and it turned out the real history is even more horrifying. So I developed a world which is reminiscent of the Kremlin, reminiscent of Russia at the time, but it's kind of twisted, surreal, dreamlike. In a way, the whole set is a Russian cathedral, where everything seems to be like a dome, including an enormous hat that comes down in the beginning, which is the symbol of power.
The pomp of the coronation of Boris Godunov. But this will be a throne of blood, because the Tsar comes to power after having engineered the brutal murder of his relative, the child Dmitri.
There's this famous line from Pushkin that he sees this bloody boy in his mind all the time. The idea was to have these little children that were murdered in the domes. Unfortunately, that was not practical. But the costume designer took off from this kind of point and started developing her costumes, and some of them became cage-like. We see the scene in the square with all the people, but he is already in the cage. You know, it's a costume that is also a steel cage. He is already trapped in his own position, in his own power. He is already a very, very unhappy man. It was very controversial, and a lot of old critics and old guard felt it was a disaster.
Audiences in Petersburg are divided. People understand every word in a way they should enjoy it more, in a way they should belong to it, in a bigger way. And yes, there is maybe possibly more criticism, but there is possibly more understanding.
Altering the signature works of the repertory has its dangers. The other danger for the Mariinsky is that it become a museum, like the golden palaces of czars, frozen in time, beautiful but lifeless. St. Petersburg, June, sometime around midnight. In this very northern city, these are the celebrated White Nights. Under the statue of Peter, the great westernizer, a disco party. After Glasnost, this new generation of Russians now has access to everything, good and bad, that the West has to offer. The prince has kissed the sleeping beauty. The spell is broken. The city awakes to the 21st century. The Mariinsky, too, faces this strong pull from the West. Ironically, the theater's very success has created a new problem, which now, once again, threatens its existence. The ballet, the opera, and the orchestra have become a wonderful training ground for young performers. But as these performers master their craft, they are tempted by lucrative contracts from the West, offering much higher salaries than the Mariinsky can afford. What can stop this drain of the theater's best and brightest? The rising opera star, Yevgeny Nikitin, has been courted by companies in the West, but at least for now, he has no intention of leaving the Mariinsky.
There isn't this narrow specialization here like there is in the West. There, a person can sing only Mozart his whole life, but I really couldn't work that way. It just wouldn't be interesting. Ours is a repertory company. Today I sing The Marriage of Figaro, tomorrow I sing Prince Igor.
What is good about Nikitin is that he's already proud of being a young star of Mariinsky. He is confident, dignified on stage. He's well prepared. He looks very good. He's very flexible musically. He's a great amfortas, for example. He's a great wanderer. In the same time he sings Fazo. In the same time he sings Banco. And he acts well in a Verdi opera. And of course, he already sang Boris. In my country, 30 years old Boris is a sensation. But we thought it's the right thing to do, to try. Give him a tremendous push and a tremendous chance. Some of it will not work immediately, but then second time, then fifth time, then 10th time, it will be better, better, better. I expect him to be one of fantastic Borises of this theater, and he doesn't have to copy or repeat something what others did. He will have his own.
Well, let's just say I didn't come to performing opera right away. It was not a calling for me from the very beginning. Growing up, it was totally different because I had an older brother. He liked Deep Purple, Pink Floyd, Led Zeppelin, Jimi Hendrix. I had a lot of fun. I also had a rock band in my youth. Well, that was all well and good, but it was also necessary to study. I entered the St. Petersburg Conservatory, and I had to change my life completely. The difference in the systems between New York and here is like this. In New York, when I go there, I sing only one opera, and only one particular role in that opera for 2 months. On the one hand, it's good. It's like a vacation. For me to sing War and Peace for 2.5 months was really like a vacation. However, that system has its drawbacks. The problem was that when I came back home, it took me a month to get back into shape. The voice is a very delicate and vulnerable thing. Missing just 1 hour of sleep can affect it. I'm really nervous before performance. Of course, it's a great responsibility to sing Boris Godunov on this stage. Performing such a role is like preparing for battle. I get an adrenaline rush. To sing about a czar, my first czar ever.
In the third act of Boris Godunov, the Tsar hears that a pretender to the throne is threatening to invade Russia from the west. But Boris is suddenly gripped by fear. He wonders if the pretender to the throne might really be the very person he thought he had murdered as a child, Dmitri, risen from the dead.
Nikitin was fantastic. He was, it was the first time he was doing a main role like that, and he's very young, he's very energetic, and he's ready to try anything. When he sees the toy, it reminds him of the child that he murdered, and that's why the toy becomes such a poignant detail. It's a focus. This is the first time he's essentially losing his sanity. Like a vision of the main square in the Kremlin, which is twisted, almost submerged into subconscious or something. You know? So all the domes, all the architecture becomes almost alive and moving, and almost underwater creatures, little tentacles, something that can be poisonous. My approach is that it's not really going through the books, studying the historical period. You have to find a very personal, sort of a plastic poem that works with the music. At the Mariinsky, for me, on some level, it's more exciting and creatively more satisfying ultimately than working in a well-established Western institution. Because, first of all, the relationship I have with Valery, where he is urging me to search for something new. There's certain flexibility, there's certain flow in the whole process, where there's room to look for new things.
People some 5 or 10 years ago predicted this ensemble will be finished very soon. I remember these predictions made from this very place. There was a TV broadcast in '91, I think it was War and Peace, and our English-British friends, in the intermission, they made a documentary. There was an interview, and the director who worked here was saying how great, how wonderful the ensemble is, but too bad it will be disappearing because the lucrative Western offers will take away all the best singers. So it's just, in fact, he was lamenting. He thought, he felt very sympathetic to the Mariinsky, but you know, maybe they didn't know that there's some people here who can take care of themselves. So we did.
In St. Petersburg, across the city from the Mariinsky Theater, a cemetery. Here, Russians come to pay homage to the geniuses of the classic opera and ballet. Among them, the graves of the composer of Boris Godunov, Modest Mussorgsky, and the creators of The Sleeping Beauty, Peter Ilyich Tchaikovsky, and the French-born choreographer, Marius Petipa. Remarkably, their work lives on in the city where it was created, a legacy in music and dance and moving bodies.
People always wonder, how can this tradition pass to the next generation? You can't learn this stuff out of a book. What book? Where is it written? And then the question is, how do you write down dance? Ballet came from Renaissance courts. It's an art that's connected to Renaissance painting. You probably know that diagram of a man that has geometrical markings on it. Ballet imagines a person in a sphere of space, and the steps dissect that sphere in ways that make a statement about what a body can do in space. Dancing is transmitted from a body to a body, and a style is picked up not by words, not by directions, not by reading in a book, but by watching somebody. Now, the depth of the coaching system of the Godunov school and the Mariinsky Theater, it's hard for us to grasp in the West because it starts in the school. A child is trained for 2, 3, or sometimes 4 years by one teacher.
Yulia Makhalina, one of the Mariinsky's prima ballerinas. Even for this internationally celebrated dancer, the learning never stops. It is here, from teacher to pupil, that the Mariinsky's powerful bond with the past is forged.
It's so important who your teacher is. I was lucky to have Olga Nikolaevna Moiseyeva. She had already coached such brilliant students as Galina Mezhentseva and Altinai Asamuratova. And you can imagine what an honor it was for me to come to her rehearsal when she had raised such world-famous stars. She doesn't suppress you with her knowledge and experience, but manages to open you up. In other words, she is shaping a raw diamond, adding new planes, shaping and trimming it.
Coach Olga Moiseyeva was herself once a star of the Kirov.
My first shock when I spent a lot of time at the Mariinsky was when someone did a bad performance and I was thinking, oh, they were lazy, they were careless, and the people around me said, bad school. So it wasn't about the individual on the stage, it was about the training, and it was about the person who had trained that girl. And the system continues to this day. It's extraordinary. You see a huge studio and 2 people working, and it's expensive to have that kind of space, but it's one of the great strengths of the theater. It's really the cornerstone of the whole Kirov world.
We are all human. We all can get tired. But she can make you work all the way. I don't know what buttons she pushes, but we always find something new during our rehearsals. Whether it's a new pose or a little trick that nobody else has done, she is a true artist who is molding a beautiful statue out of a student. And of course, her human qualities are beyond mentioning. We are her daughters, and she is our mother.
In ballet and in opera, it is this century-and-a-half unbroken link of one generation to the next that is the real strength of the Mariinsky. In its past is its future. 13-year-old Vanya Pushkin plays the role of Boris Godunov's son.
Of course, it's very prestigious. They have lovely voices. It's a pleasure to be around those people. Besides, I've gained a lot of experience. They tell me how to do things, like how to save the voice.
Yes, there is a future of Russia if you see the boy who is a son of Boris, you hope he will survive. As we all know, in that story, the boy didn't survive. He was killed. Today, there are few boys. Yes, few boys, which means few hopes. Very, in fact, strong hopes. It's a better time for Russia than ever in the last 10 years, 12 years, maybe 20 years. More stability, more hope, more health. Still way to go, way to go. Young president, more understanding of culture, more people coming together. They're not even 50-50. I think kind of evil side of it is still dominating. But at some point it was 90-10. Now it's maybe 60-40. So we're fighting back, if I may say. And fighting back sometimes very successful. So Kirov is important. In this fight, Kirov is one of the leaders.
This is a very special day for Yulia Makhalina. 35 years old and one of the company's top dancers, she is headed for a rehearsal studio in the Mariinsky Theater. But today, her coach will not be waiting for her. Today, it is not she who will be the student. This is not a scene you are likely to see in the West. Tatyana Tkachenko, a dancer at the start of her career. Today is the first lesson with her new coach. It is now the turn of the dancer who has learned from other dancers to pass on the legacy.
In our theater, often a star dancer does not become a coach. But here, there's a tradition that the ballerinas at the top of the line, the top of their fame, become coaches for younger dancers, which is interesting when you think about the ego a performer needs.
когда человек эту веру и служение музе принял.
A dancer must devote her life to dance.
Его не мучает, почему его фамилия не стоит впереди другого
And she is not
человека.
bothered by why her last name is not in front of another last name.
Он точно знает
She
свое
knows her
место.
place,
И он знает,
and
что
she knows
сегодня
that
стоит
today
его
this
фамилия,
last name is in the
а завтра
front,
будет стоять
tomorrow
его.
your last name will be there,
послезавтра
the day
будет
after
другая
tomorrow
фамилия.
someone else's.
Это, наверное, гениально, когда человек...
I truly think it's amazing when a person at 35 can start passing her knowledge along.
Потому что здесь еще ты и сам можешь показать, и ты и сам еще в силе, но в то же время ты
Your
настолько
knowledge and
уже
skill are like ripe fruit,
зрелая, что тебя уже
waiting
нужно
to be picked.
снять с дерева. Поворот. Посмотрела на него и уходишь от взгляда. И он по тебе спускается. Мне очень интересно подсказывать ей.
This young ballerina,
Очень интересно, что она как барахтается,
she's
как
like a
еще
little
маленький
kitten,
котенок в
floundering
этом
in the new
пластике. Но
form,
зато я
and my job as a
знаю, какие
choreographer
надо
is to
нажимать
push the right
педали,
buttons
чтобы у нее
for her
получилось.
to achieve the right effect.
И туда, смело, вот. Еще смелее можешь. Еще раз. Вот это красиво показала мне ногу сейчас. Только можешь еще красивее вытянуть стопу. Давай, используй свои данные. Давай еще раз. Нога пошла. И вот. Это хорошо. Дальше. Вот так, да. Хорошо. Двойной пируэт. И прямо прыгай. Вот. Угу. Так. Полупальцы. Не торопитесь. Наверх, наверх ножка. Два пируэта. И давай, садись. Я не скрою, что вот не получилось у меня. У меня было два момента замужества.
I won't hide the fact that I had two opportunities to get married and to just become a happy woman,
Но вот как-то не получилось мне делить мою профессию.
but I couldn't share my work.
Я не могу ее разделить ни с кем.
I can't share it with
Может быть,
anybody.
это произойдет позже, когда, может быть, я перейду в стадию
Maybe it will happen later when I become a teacher. I don't know.
Но пока я на сцене, я полностью
But as long as I'm on
отдаюсь
stage, I
этой
dedicate
сцене.
myself only to my art.
И поэтому, конечно, бывают печали,
Of course,
грусти,
there are
бывают
moments of
моменты
sadness and loneliness,
но зато у меня есть Мариинский театр.
but I still have the
есть
sacred stage of the
священная сцена.
Mariinsky Theater.
И поэтому я всегда нахожу какие-то, не знаю, может быть, я уже сошла с ума, но я
Sometimes I
начинаю
think
всё время
maybe I've
думать о
gone
том, что
crazy.
я безумно счастливый человек.
But I think I'm an
Единственное,
immensely
что,
happy
в общем-то,
person.
когда мне одиноко, поднимает меня
This is the
настроение,
only
потому
thought
что-
that can bring me back from my
потому что
sadness
не каждый
sometimes.
может похвастаться, что, в
Not
общем,
everybody
есть
can
такая
say that there
священная
is a
сцена, на которой
sacred
ты можешь
stage
танцевать.
where I can dance.